And we're live. Buka Fit Podcast. Kevin Oldham and Jose Bolaños coming at you. We are excited that you're here. We are super excited that you're here because today we're going to talk about doing great work, being remarkable. And in a world where mediocre seems to be the bar, I think that great work and being remarkable is one of the best just overall business strategies that's available. But also, you know, if you're a kid listening, doing great work matters. I mean, just doing great work, you're somebody whose primary job is to support the house. Doing great work matters. So we're going to talk about that. Jose, what's up, brother?
What's up? How are you?
I'm good. Does my colored shirt make you feel uncomfortable?
You look a little formal today, man. I'm not used to
feel
you
formal.
Looking like
I'm going to be a pallbearer at a funeral, like wearing a black.
Right?
Yeah,
like a funeral. You're wearing black and everything. Long sleeve.
I should button up my top button. Button up the top button. Give it a little serial killer look. A little psychopath. How's this?
A little.
This is a reason. This is a good reason to tune into our. This is a great reason to turn into our YouTube channel.
Lit. Yeah, you look like a religious, psycho.
I do. I look like a psycho. I appreciate that. That. Well, you know what? I look good doing it. And since we're talking about doing good work and the word good, you know, there was a prolific essay that Paul Graham wrote called Doing Great Work or Doing Good Work, one of the two. We'll link it in the show notes. It's a seminal piece of writing. I mean, it's one that is really well thought out. And if you're not familiar with Paul Graham's essays, you can go to paulgraham.com. He's an early internet entrepreneur, but he's also a deep thinker. I sent that essay to you, and then I also sent you a podcast episode where people were talking about that essay. How did that essay impact you, Jose? Just out of curiosity, when you read it.
It resonated deeply because I think it spoke into how I've wanted to, you know, what I've always believed in my own work, doing my own work. I think it really resonated. You know, I'm big into complexity management, and I'm fascinated by emergence.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody understands what emergence is, but the emerging reality. The reality is always emerging. And Paul Graham's essay and his best practices for doing great work just really spoken to that way of managing the potential of what we can create, of what we can achieve. You know, how do we achieve great work and extraordinary work in our lives?
Right.
So I think it just really resonated with me when I read it. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I even printed it out because it was so, I mean, it's long. I'm looking at it right now, and I can't remember if I were to hit print right now. I'm not at my office. Oh, here. It would be, if I printed out 25 pages, and to put it in perspective, 3 of those pages are notes, like annotations. So it's a Paul Graham's a really, really great essay writer. He actually just wrote one that's getting everybody going nuts called Founder Mode, which on Twitter and X is going nuts. But this one I think will go down as one of his greater pieces of work, because I think that he recognizes what a lot of us recognize, which is that we live in this society now where everything is kind of disposable, or particularly like we think about physical goods. When we talk about doing great work and making something. You know, I've always had an appreciation for things that are made by hand, that are made by somebody. You know, not a company, not a factory, not some faceless person in China, but like a human being that made something and then gave that to you or created that for you. And so I always found appreciation of going on like Etsy and finding great physical work that I would give to people as gifts. But what Paul's talking about more is just doing great work in your could be your business, could be your personal life.
Yeah.
But you know, Paul comes from the software space where doing great work is code, you know, which is kind of an interesting way to think about it.
So I remember I had the notes for, you know, I took notes on this Who was the podcast? It wasn't. It was a Paul Graham's
I don't
podcast.
remember.
Or was it about Paul
No.
Graham's podcast?
No, it was
about
just
Paul
somebody
Graham's
summarized.
essay. It was somebody talking about his essay, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Some of the principles that he talks about.
You know, one of the things that I always come up with, and that helps me as a leader try to get my team to do great work. Because if I say, "Hey, are we doing great work?" They're gonna be like, "What do you mean?" Right? I'll use the word remarkable.
Yeah.
Like, are we? Is what we're doing remarkable? Because if the answer is no, if we're just kind of checking the box, then should we or do we need to be doing it? And that's just like a litmus test that I've carried around. I bet you I've carried around the word remarkable for the past 15 years as a way to determine if something is awesome or not. If somebody's done great work.
How do you decide that it's remarkable? For
It's
example,
subjective.
he starts by saying, pick something that of your interest, something that interests you. And it doesn't really matter what that is. Just
Right.
be sure that it's interesting to you. Doesn't
Right.
matter if it's interesting to others. It's something that you have a natural aptitude for, something that, you have
Yeah.
profound interest in, that's going to give you this ability to do great work. Develop your interests and don't worry about
Yep.
the path. Don't worry where it's going to take you. And don't worry if it's not quite clear what it is. But you gotta
Correct.
I like that he says that curiosity, enthusiasm, and interest have to be the rudder, the wind and the sail. The wind and the sail have to be your curiosity, your enthusiasm, and your interest. Then he says,
Because you can't fake those things, and those things will keep you going during the trough. Like where you start out a project and there's all the excitement, and then you don't get the feedback you want, and like keep you going, right? Not too dissimilar from the journey that we're on with Buka Fit. I mean, let's just talk about it. We come out and assume that everybody's going to care about improving their lives, and not everybody cares, and that's okay, right?
but we have enthusiasm for it. We have enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Enthusiasm is key. Enthusiasm and interest are key to great work. If you're not enthusiastic and interested in it and excited about it,
Quit.
you're not going to do anything great. It's really hard to do something great where there is no enthusiasm. And there's a lot of people
He also
that
talks
work without enthusiasm. They just work.
He also talks about being like original, originality and putting on the blinders and almost ignoring what everybody thinks. And I think there's something to be said about that. There's a time to come up and get feedback on what you're working on and determine if you built something that actually people care about or not, right? But there's also something to be said. What's that?
You got to balance that, right? What people think and So to be curious about it, to be curious about uncommon ideas that maybe other people haven't explored yet. And he says to explore the field until you get to the edge, until you get to the frontier of the field.
I love that.
So explore the field until you're at the frontier of the field, and that's where you find the gaps in the field.
Yeah.
I can see some of that, for example, in the home service business leaders, and finding the gap with presence-based leadership. It's like how much mindfulness and presence-based leadership is being taught to home service business leaders. So I see.
Not much unless it's Jose.
I think there's a gap and an opportunity there. I think it fits very well, and it's not completely common to focus on that. So I think there's an opportunity to push that frontier, to be a mindful home service business owner, to have a presence-based approach to leading in the home service space and being VUCA fit in that space. I think that's a frontier that I feel I'm exploring.
Yeah. The cool thing is, like, you're going into it, and not everybody who's going to do great work has the benefit of a little bit of reassurance as they're getting ready to do it, but you've already had that experience helping home services folks, right? And I think that, we're talking about feedback and getting feedback on what you're working on, or taking Paul Graham's approach and really just building what you feel like the world needs, which I think is incorrect to a certain degree as well. There is this happy medium where you've got to make sure that you're building something that people care about, that they value, they'll pay with their attention or their money or whatever it is that you're asking. So like you said, there's this delicate balance. You've got to make sure that you're building something that's valuable, that you're persisting and getting through the trough or the hard periods when you probably want to give up, but that passion and your commitment to building whatever the heck it is that you're building,
well, there is
perseveres and pushes you through.
There is a dichotomy here that I find.
There's a big one. As I'm saying it.
You hear Rick Rubin say, write and create art that you love for yourself. Like, don't think about what others are going to think about. But then, I'm reading Ryan Holiday's book. What was it called in English? Perennial. It's called
The Perennial Seller, The Art of Making and Marketing Work That Lasts, which I cannot endorse because I've never read it. I didn't even know that Holiday wrote this book.
In that book, he writes about really focusing on what people want. So you have Rick Rubin saying, don't focus so much on what people want. Focus on creating art like what you love. Art, you create art for yourself. And then you have other people saying, you gotta create what other people want. So I think there's a balance, or maybe try to make more sense of that. Like, how much do I actually think about what others want and have them guide my work, and how much do I think about what I believe in and what guides my own work?
Yeah, so totally a good dichotomy. Yeah, it's the human condition. You get to manage those things. I mean, it's also kind of like some of the things he talks about. He talks about being original and ignoring distractions, yet and trying to ignore like external validation. Like those things are directly in contrast with everything that I've ever taught an early stage startup when I used to mentor them. Like, no, we need to get feedback quick and often. We need to iterate, boom, 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 product market fit, right? All these things. Maybe we weren't doing great work. I don't know.
Well, again, going back to Ryan Holiday's book, he speaks about getting feedback. He talks about getting feedback, but how careful you need to be to not lose yourself in that feedback, because you can show the same work to somebody and they might say, this is great, this is awful, this is uninteresting, this is interesting. Like, you are going to get some mixed reviews. So I guess it is about trying things out, getting feedback, usually when I do great things, I'm usually just responding to what people are asking for.
Yeah.
So when I did Unbreakable, the flagship program, I didn't think about giving everybody a shirt, but I wore a shirt one day. And then when I showed up with it, everybody was like, hey, I want a shirt. And then the shirt is part of the program. And now we've sold over 1,500 shirts along with the program. It's a key part of that. But I didn't know. I didn't know that until people actually said, "That's what we want. We want that shirt." And I say, "Oh, we're going to give a shirt to people." They said, and that's usually how I work. It's like, hey, I want to do that. When I started getting in ice baths, and people in my country started saying, "Hey, I want to do that. Hey, I want to do that." I'm like, "Hey, if one person wants to do it, maybe more want to do it." I'm gonna launch a program, and I'm going to invite people to a workshop and put them in ice and then charge them money for it. I didn't think ahead, I'm going to sell this to people. I said, oh, people want it. I'm going to package it.
You were answering the call. I mean, they drove. They steered it where they wanted you to go.
Yeah. So the other thing,
which may not have been great work, by the way. It may not have been something you were passionate about, curious about. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, if you let your customers hear you, you may not be doing great work for yourself. And I think that's a lot of, like, if you look at what Rick Rubin talks about, I think he's talking about art, creating things that for yourself. And then Paul is also an artist. A lot of people don't know that. He wrote a book called Hackers and Painters. He went to art school, like in Europe. He's also a coder. He's got another weird dichotomy of a human. It's like code and art, right? Almost completely different or completely the same if you really go too deep on it.
I didn't know that about him. Fascinating.
Fascinating character. Fascinating dude.
Coding and art, I think, have a lot of like similarities. Like, there's a lot of complexity management to it. There's a lot of variables to it. So
balance, everything. Yeah.
The other thing he says is find something that's fun, and find something that's fun. Don't be afraid to change fields. I mean, he literally said, you're talking about being focused on one thing, but he also mentions don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to pivot and let go of something. And he says one last thing, which is fascinating. He's like, you owe loyalty to no one or nothing. Like, you don't owe a field loyalty. You don't own a boss loyalty. You don't owe a job. Like, there's so many people, especially in corporate America that I've talked to, that they feel they owe loyalty to the person that's giving them a job for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
They don't want to leave because they owe loyalty to this person. And I think if it were the other way around, if the company had to get rid of them, very rarely would a company feel that they owe loyalty to somebody that worked for them.
Yeah.
And I see that
They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't. Yeah, they don't. I mean, I see it all the time. I've known people that have given their entire careers to companies and they get let go like not too far from retirement. I mean, it just happens. It does happen.
Yeah. So find something that's fun. Don't be afraid to change your field. Don't be afraid to pivot. Always go after your interest. I remember when I was working with a company here for many years. I worked with them for about 3 years, consulting on creating a happiness culture. I think I mentioned this one thing to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Creating a culture of happiness. And we kept on working until one day the boss, the owner came up to me and he's like, I want you to start creating something around customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
But my interest was going in another direction.
Yeah.
And I had to sit down and really think about, okay, what do I want to do now? And I actually felt, I was confident enough at that point in my work and what I was doing and in my process to tell them, you know what, I don't want to do anything on customer. I think this is the moment we can part ways. I want to dig more into mindfulness and generative practices and this other stuff. I don't want to jump into customer experience. And that's literally when we decided to part ways. If I had felt loyalty to them, if I felt obligated or that I needed to stay on that track, I probably would have, it probably would have been a mistake for me.
It probably would have been a mistake for the company too, because you wouldn't have done your best work. Because if you weren't bringing yourself to it, right, you weren't going to do great work. You might have done the work and you can do the work. And that's not what this episode's about. Like, I have a shirt that says do the work. That means just do the reps, like show up, doing great work, exemplary work, which is rare in the world. It is rare, in my opinion.
Yeah, but there's only one way to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's doing your work.
Yeah.
It's we go back to Ikigai, finding your Ikigai. I'm reading a book on Ikigai again right now.
How many books are you reading right now? How many books are you reading at the same time? I usually have 5 going.
Yeah. I'm listening to The Richest Man in Babylon. I'm reading
that. Hold on. Time out. Dude, that's one of the books I'm rereading right now. That's hilarious. But I'm not doing the audio.
Let's talk about another episode.
Yeah.
So Ryan Holiday's book, I'm doing it for 75 hard, so it's physical. Richest Man in Babylon, I'm listening on my walks in audio. Cool. Which other book did I mention?
I don't know.
I don't know what other books I mentioned right now, but I lost my train of thought. Where was I going?
I don't know. We're talking about books. I was like, we're just made in Babylon.
No. I was saying you got to do your work. You got to do.
Yeah.
You got to. So I'm reading. I'm rereading not rereading. I'm reading a book on Ikigai because somebody referenced it in the program that I'm leading right now. Which is about monetizing your passion, your talent, and your purpose, which I really want to focus on it being a path to creating extraordinary work, like by finding your Ikigai, which is what I'm discovering in this book. And I think that's the bottom line here is if Ikigai isn't something you find, Ikigai is something you do every day. It's like you do things that hone your talents or that use your talents, your passion, what you're able to give to the world. And when you're doing that, it just works out. It just, it just unfolds in front of you. So to do great work, you got to do you. You got to do your work, and you got to find out what that is. And not everybody can connect to that with what really is their work, their offer. For me, there was a breakthrough moment when I said to myself, after suffering a lot of anxiety around I was going to be a speaker in a session, and I was really anxious about it because I really wanted them to approve me and accept me and love me. And I was like, what do I talk about that they're going to love? How do I make sure that whatever I do, they love? And I was really focused on that to the point where I almost had like a collapse, like a panic attack.
Really?
Well, I was super anxious. I was almost not going to be able to perform. And finally I said, finally I had like an epiphany, like an insightful moment where I was like, yo, fuck this, man. Like, you do you. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, great.
Great.
All you
exactly. Good.
Yeah. You do you. If it works, great. And if it doesn't work, great. And in that moment, I remember I took my shirt out because I had my shirt tucked in. I was dressed like a dork, and I changed my shoes, and I just changed even how I was dressed. I was like, this isn't me. And I changed that. I relaxed, and I went in there and I talked about what I loved and what I do and who I am. And it was the best response I've ever gotten from a group, from a speaking.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was the best reaction that I got, the best response that I got. And that really reaffirmed that notion for me that all I can do is me. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, great.
Yeah.
So my job is just to figure out what doing me actually is.
Joseing.
And the more I do me, the greater my work will be. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, well, that wasn't the place.
Yeah.
So again, going back to some of the notes that I wrote, it says, write a story that you want to read and create the art that you want to experiment. Yeah. So stay connected.
He also talks about.
Go ahead.
He also talks about like finishing it, like completing it, because that's actually one of his last things. He's like actually like getting it done, because work that you don't ship, that you don't put into the world, is just mental masturbation. I mean, it literally is. If you can create. I used to use this analogy all the time. On websites that were not optimized for search. I'm like, it's the equivalent of painting a beautiful picture and then throwing it in the closet. Nobody can find it. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't have done it. If you're not going to show it to the world and ship it, then it's more, maybe call it a project. It's not work. I don't know. Well, maybe call it art. If you don't ship it, it's art.
That's right. That's my next note is don't plan too much. He talks about not planning too much.
Yeah.
Like, don't spend so much time planning and finish what you start. Finish what you start and build a business and a project that's authentic to you. He just keeps on coming back to being authentic to you, to being driven by enthusiasm, curiosity. Yeah. Avoid distractions. Let me see.
Avoid distractions. Ignore shiny objects, right? I mean, it's easy when you're creating to get lost, I think, in exploring what else you could do to make whatever you're creating more magnificent. For me, I could easily. Let's use an example, like our e-commerce store. It can result in me absolutely going onto our printer's website and spending a ton of time just goofing around making designs. I'm like, well, for the sake of what? Why did I do this? So I get it.
But again, it's a dichotomy. Avoid distractions.
Yeah.
That are going to distract you from doing the best work, but also let your mind wander to generate new ideas. So on the one hand, you got to avoid distractions and be focused, but on the other hand, you got to also let your mind wander. So I think that again is a polarity that needs to be managed. And shoot for the best. Stay committed. So again, we got
be curious. Let's kind of go through it again. Let's go through it because we've kind of gone a lot. You have a
I
what?
have a presentation right here. You want me to go through it?
No.
The different points?
Yeah, the different points. I don't want you to go through the presentation.
No.
I've been in a ton of meetings today. I can't handle another one.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
go.
just going to shoot you the point. So one, choose a field that connects with your talents, has a natural interest, you're going to develop deep natural interest for, and that's going to permit you to develop great work. Don't worry about where that's going to end up. And not everything is, not everything has to be defined at the beginning. Choose something and start. Again, connected to what you're passionate about. Let curiosity, enthusiasm guide you. Enthusiasm is the key to great work. He repeats that so many times. Enthusiasm being, be curious about uncommon ideas that people haven't explored, making new connections. Learn enough about your field that's going to get you to the edge, to get to that frontier of the field. And in that frontier of the field, at the edge of the field, you're going to find the gaps, the promising gaps that are going to let you, create something new, innovative, extraordinary. Find something that's fun. Don't be afraid to change, to pivot into something that, wakes more interest. Maybe you're in something that's interesting, but then suddenly something more interesting comes along and you owe no one no loyalty. No field or no person loyalty. I always tell my kids this: don't ever feel trapped. And I think this speaks into that. Don't ever feel trapped. She's like, yeah, but he's my boyfriend. Don't feel trapped by that.
Don't feel trapped. Yeah.
No, but I've been working here for so long. Don't feel trapped. Yeah, but it's my family. Don't ever feel trapped.
Yeah.
You're not trapped into any of those things.
I think it's one of the smartest things that you've said in today's episode, right? It's like so many people, we've been talking about Paul this whole time and his stuff, and now we've got our own original thoughts, right? But don't feel trapped. So many people, I think, I know people that have like that sunk cost fallacy. They're, hey, I've invested so much in this, I'm just going to keep going and hope it gets better. I'm like, no, sometimes you just need to rip off the Band-Aid and call it done, right?
Yeah, quit.
It's okay. Yeah, quit.
You're not trapped with that by that partnership.
I mean, in the reality, we're all going to die one day. It won't matter.
I love, I just heard somebody say that, like, we should start every board meeting with the fact that we're all going to die. All right, guys, we're all going to die someday. Before we start this meeting, let's just realize that this really doesn't
just
matter.
Soak in it. Think about your funeral for the next 60 seconds, and then let's have this meeting. I
mean, it's all going to be over.
I'm going to start showing up in these black shirts all the time and button them up, like on Monday mornings. Be like, hey, team.
Let me wrap this up.
Yeah, wrap it.
Write the story that you want to read. Create the art that you want to experiment. Things that you're enthusiastic about. Don't plan too much. Finish what you start. Build a business and a project that's authentic to you. Avoid distractions. Don't let distractions, take you away from your work, but also let your mind wander to generate new ideas. And shoot for the best. Shoot for being the best. Excellent. At the top.
Be remarkable.
Be remarkable.
Be remarkable.
Be you, man.
I didn't even do that. See that random thumbs up just pop up?
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Now it's not random.
I love it. It was weird how it popped up before. What if somebody doesn't know what to work on? I guess they just got to go back to the basics. It's like, hey, what are you interested in? Like Ikigai, what are you interested in? Yeah, you just gotta make sure that you're aligned. Otherwise, you'll give up probably when things get hard, and then you'll never finish it. It won't be great work. It'll be a project that's unfinished.
Here's an interesting insight I had with the Ikigai and the group that I'm in right now. I sent it as homework, and when they came back, I found that a lot of them weren't able to answer any of those questions. Like the answer to what are my talents is like, I don't know what my talents are. What are you passionate about? Oh, I don't know what I'm passionate about. What does the world need, and what are you going to get paid for? How can you monetize it? And they couldn't answer it. So this is what happened. One person said, yeah, but what if I'm passionate about not working? Like, I don't want to work that much. Dude, that's great. Take that. No, don't let anybody
roll with it. Figure it out.
Like, figure it out. Like, I want to create a job. Dude, one of my passions was I want to surf when the waves are good. I want to be the owner of my own time. I don't work, dude. If you knew how many hours a week I work, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. I'm not embarrassed by it, but it's not that much. It's not that much. So the other person was writing what she was good at, and she wrote something. She said, I want to have fun doing this and this and this. And she was talking about her talent of connecting people. But then I rewrote it and I thought, I can't put fun in there. I'm like, that's where you fucked up, where you took fun out. When you took fun out, that's when you messed up. That's when you toned it down. The right fun, really connect. And then one more person, just to finish his thought, is he does soccer games every weekend. And he's like, dude, I am the coach, the captain, the sponsor, the organizer. I do all this for these soccer tournaments. And I'm like, those are your talents, bro.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't bridged what he's doing in the world of soccer into his professional world. He can't see that that's actually his ikigai. What he's doing right there in soccer is actually pointing in the direction of his ikigai. But he hadn't noticed that those were all talents. The leading, the coach, the captaining, the organizing. Those are all parts of your talents. And people aren't capable of answering that. So if they can't answer that, they can't create great work.
Yeah.
You know
there
that?
You go. That's it.
Yeah.
Can't answer those questions. It's impossible to do great work. Right?
Bottom line.
So it starts with self-exploration first, right?
Bottom line for me is, if great work is doing you great, doing yourself great, is doing you at the highest level, is finding self-awareness, self-knowledge, knowing yourself, your talents, your passion, your interests, your enthusiasm, and being guided by that. That's what's going to lead you to create great work.
That's it.
That's it. It's being you.
That's it. Do you. Is that a wrap, man?
I think that's a wrap.
I think that's a wrap. Let's start rapping and scratching records. No, too much. All right, that's a wrap.
I did go to
next week. You what?
Go to his house. My friend, he's good. He's interested in vinyls.
Yeah.
And he put a vinyl on, and he put the thing on. And I'm like, I walk up to it, and I'm like, hey, look, watch this. And I was going to pretend that I was going to like scratch it. He really freaked out.
He freaked out. Yeah, he's probably really into vinyl. He's like, no, dude, you're going to mess up my needle.
I'm like, bro, check it out. I've seen this on TV. Like,
he didn't appreciate it.
He did not appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. And moreover, I appreciate our listeners. And so I'm Kevin. He's Jose. This is Buka Fit. We appreciate you. Till next week, have a phenomenal week and be well.